Thank you all for joining us today. Our mission is to recognize, celebrate, and amplify the stories of individuals who persevere in acts of truth-telling to strengthen our democracy and/or illuminate a more just vision of society. Through our work, we aim to inspire and empower individuals like yourselves to take action and make a difference within your communities. Our fireside chats serve the purpose of creating a dedicated space for thought leaders, experts, and truth tellers to engage in thought-provoking discussions and share their insights, experiences, knowledge on a specific topic. Today, we are privileged to have two guest speakers, one who is very familiar with our platform, who will guide us in exploring in the significance of examining our past history so we can make well-informed decisions that shape our present and future, leading us towards a more equitable and just society for all. We invite you to engage with our speakers by utilizing the Q&A feature on the right-hand side. And with that said, our moderator is Jarvis Williams, Racial Equity and Accountability Strategist for Project and Government Oversight. And our panelist is Reverend Riggins Earl Jr., author, writer, and professor of ethics and theology at the Interdenominational Theological Center of the Atlanta University Center. The Ridenhour Prizes is grateful to have you both. Welcome back. We look forward to you all sharing your stories, experiences, and expertise, and we look forward to this conversation. So Jarvis, take it away.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Janelle. And thank the Ridenhour Prizes for this opportunity. Welcome, Dr. Earl.
Thank you, sir.
It's so good to be in conversation with you. For the audience's, the purpose of the audience, I met Dr. Earl maybe in 2007. Dr. Earl was a professor at the Interdenominational Theological Center. I was fresh out of college, and I went to Interdenominational Theological Seminary trying to learn how to be a leader in the context of clergy and in the Christian tradition. And Pops, I never forget, I was in your class and I had a hard time, life was happening, and you pulled me aside and you said, son, I can tell that something's wrong. And you asked me about how I was doing. And after long conversations, I decided to actually leave school to go home to try to take care of things that were going on in my life. And came back. And ever since then, it's been a blazing trail for me trying to live up to and learn from your leadership. And I wanted to start that way. And then I'll give you a chance to kind of introduce some of your background if you want to. But I remember and appreciate the fact that before you cared how much, and before you tried to show me how much you knew, you showed me how much you cared. And I think to be blessed with an opportunity to be in a space where so often that is the test of being with and serving communities that have lived under such tyranny and such oppression, is not so much how much do you know, but how much do you care? And you modeled that. And so I want to publicly thank you for modeling that type of leadership, because it has informed the way I do policy. It informs the questions I ask. It informs what I advocate for. But I think it's deeper in the sense that to lead a people, you've helped to see that you have to love people. You have to care for them and their well-being. So I wanted to thank you for that and give you a moment to tell me or tell us, what has it been like for you? Just trying to think with Black history as a Black Ph.D. out of Vanderbilt, traveled around the country, written books, written articles. What has that journey been like for you?
Thank you, Mr. Williams, and Mr. Jarvis Williams, and we got two Williamses here. Yes, the Ridenhour Miss Janelle Williams, who is in charge of the helping us deliver this today, this program. It has been it has been like a mountain, I should say, like a mountain climber who's trying to get from one level, one place in the mountain to the next. I'm not unaware of the fact that I was born and reared in a society of that stigmatized my ethnic group, my people. When I say my people, I mean my ethnic group, as not only enslaved them, but also the long period of segregated history, especially in the South, of keeping us as second-class citizens, and primarily keeping us from having from certain canons of knowledge, as well as keeping us from the economic resources that would be necessary for people to develop and strive in this country. So, and I've just finished a major book, manuscript, and getting ready to go to the publisher with it on one of the many books that I've written, but this one is on the Jesus crises in Black consciousness. And it's not about what people think it is, and that is, oh, you're writing about religion. No, I'm writing about Western civilization and the way it misconstrued interpretations of a name that really the Roman Empire made the name of Jesus the most powerful name in Western history. And we generally don't think about Jesus, the name Jesus, in that way, but it was under Constantine that you get this politicizing of Jesus's name that just becomes mind-boggling, the way Europeans could use that name and justify their violence against other peoples in the world. So it's my life to leadership has been one of climbing the mountain, trying to get to the peak of it against those who, as one professor said, I heard him in a lecture in a very small seminar context. He said that, racism, the inequality of America is built on an inequality of race, sex, etc. So the people who, Black people and white females at that period he was looking at says that what happens is that all of us we live under a glass ceiling, and we can see the top dogs on the top, and the class of people who are doing well, etc. But the masses of the people can never break through that glass ceiling. They can see what's up there, some of what's up there, but they cannot break through it. So that experience has really made me determined to fight the odds and study and use the tools of knowledge to fight inequality. And I was all those models in many of the people who influenced me in growing up. And no leadership, perhaps, in my generation had the impact on me that the leadership of the late Dr. Martin King Jr. had, because he he became a voice at that time of that was unbelievable. It was, I mean, here you're talking about trying to save the soul of America. And it was an evangelical culture. The South it was anyway. So it sounds good, but we didn't know how complex the soul of America is, whether we lived in the North or the South, because the soul of it is on one side is nightmarish, given the history of enslavement and the mistreatment of American Indians. And on the other side, it flourishes with the tales and saga of the Mayflower, from the Mayflower on, of whether you're talking about the aristocratic Southerners or the robber barons of who came later to develop and romance, or at least develop what we call industrial America. So all of that, I think when you talk about equality, you cannot talk about it without drawing on the different languages, if you will, of America. And I don't mean by languages the language of nationality. I'm really talking about the conversations that we have about who is worthy and who is unworthy. And that's a very complex conversation. Let me stop there.
No, I think it's a good segue into one of the things I wanted to ask you, and that is thinking with Black history, this challenge we have, and not we meaning our ethnic group, but just Americans who are trying to advance the nation. And one of the things that I think my understanding and my reading of those who are part of our ethnic group, Black Americans fighting to advance this democracy in the Western civilization in a form that's has some form of integrity around the questions of race and identity. It seems very complicated to do that work without struggling with this complexity that you're referring to. This complexity of the soul of the nation, the complexity of the nightmarish elements, and then those salvific moments, the nightmare between the terror and then the moments we band together and do the unthinkable things. And I think in my experience, one of the things that you've helped me to think through, but I would just want to ask you to say more. Do you see our lack of understanding of this complexity, or maybe our need to romanticize certain moments? Do you see that as a barrier in our ability to steer our nation toward a better tomorrow? And to what extent, if you do see that as a challenge, to what extent did your generation and what have you been trying to model for the next generation to not just be an activist, but to think about the web of oppression that we spawn in the Western world around quick questions of race and identity and religion? And
yeah, right. Yes, very good, very good. I think what helped me is the time period in which I was born and reared. I was the product of a family, well, not the family, I was the product of an American generation that was born to men primarily. Yes, there were women who were a part of this narrative, but they were the products of a war unlike this nation had never fought in before. And of course, the mantra of going to war was that we have got to fight to save democracy, which meant that every youngster, Black or white, males were drafted if they were fit, what they said were fit, they were drafted into to the United States Army and sent to Europe, and not just to Europe because it was a world war. So they were fighting on fronts around the world, and that's something often that we don't think about even when we talk about it. Or this generation probably has very little interest in that. The fact that that was a global war, that the European nations, the United States being one, Europe, those European nations had spread their wings around the world, whether it was South America, Africa, they had colonized Africa and India, and China. Those wars were being fought on all of those soils. And of course, the European theater was the center of it because Adolf Hitler was the kingpin who had developed this killing machine. And my nation, my generation, because of the time period in which we were born, and it gets back to the issue of fate, that we are now, as we come to school, the teachers and everybody who touched us are talking about the war. That it was, and of course, the language they used was, God had to be on the side of America to save us, the Western world, from a madman and his killing machine. But little did we, and we heard our uncles and daddies and those who had been off to that war say that God was trying to tell racist America something. He had a message for us out of this war. And that is that they can't go on, this nation can't go on treating its dark citizens or citizens of color the way it has done.
No,
they believe that. Yeah, they believe that. So education to my generation, at least to some of us, was to try to better understand what happened, what was that, and who are these people, and why did the United States drop a bomb on Hiroshima? Why, and they kill up all those people? What, and we started going back reading. We were told by scholars, go back and read so and so of the previous century. Go back and read W.E.B. Du Bois and his commentary on race in the country. And he said at that time, the turn of the last century, he said, the problem of the 20th century in America, the problem that goes all the way to the soul of the country will be that of race. Race, its racism is its greatest enemy. So that's the period that motivates many of us of that generation to a desire of leadership, to get the tools of knowledge, because it was made very clear to us that you won't be able to do this without the tools of knowledge. So as I traveled and got older and went off to school and joined Dr. King's movement and then traveled to different parts of the world, it became very clear to me, but that this is a complex world we live in. And whoever conquers the other in the world that we live in now has to bring the enemies home. Now that's a testy statement, because what we saw happen, what our daddies and mothers and those who had been a part of that World War II, what they saw happen is the very people we tried to kill off and fight to defend this country and democracy, we brought them back to America and made room for them. And Blacks stood and said, what the heck is going on? You asked us to go fight, and now you are advancing these people in ways that you never intended. Even after we won the war, you never intended us to have this kind of progress.
It's, one of the things that I want to, think out loud with you in this way, because part of what you're sharing is the way in which a generation that you were a beneficiary to be a part of was thinking about Western civilization and how the question of race was compromising our institutions, compromising culture, compromising institutions, whether it's religious or civic. And I think now I can imagine people listening to this conversation, and some might be wondering, well, when I think about racial equity, all I'm thinking about is the latest example that we have of Blacks being mistreated, or the latest example we have of this group being mistreated. And so part of what I think a difference between the generation that I think I would imagine myself to be a part of and what you're modeling is this deep interrogation of race as a part of the democratic project and as a part of Western civilization, as opposed to the latest issue that this one area with this one group in this one place having to put out this kind of fire around some form of inequality or some form of racism, et cetera. But the larger critique, the larger interrogation of America is something that I have found wanting around people who profess to do racial equity work, because it's so limited in the way in which people think about it. So then we underinvest in the inquiries you're talking about until, and you make this point, until the nation becomes so confronted with the problem that we need some form of collaboration amongst the races to solve. So when you think about the Civil War, you think about Lincoln and releasing Blacks to fight in the war because he started to understand that that would be an asset for the Union and it would be the way to win the war. You saw World War I, World War II. You see these examples of the nation starting to say, wait a minute, we cannot afford to trip over ourselves on questions of race because there are larger issues and problems we have to solve. And it doesn't mean that race is a small problem, but it does mean that in the grand scheme, it seems that your generation is trying to help us to imagine a Western civilization that has embedded in it these principles and practices of racial equality. But we have struggled, obviously we're struggling now to do it, so that now here we are in 2023, where we're talking about it again. So what does it feel like for you to see now? Because I would imagine for your generation, to talk about race was to talk about something that was less than interesting in social discourse. So Black studies comes up because we need to talk about race, but it's really not the big question of the issue. And now you see conversations starting to be more and more robust around, we have got to figure out how to talk about race.
How to talk about it, yes.
What does that feel like? What is it? How do you think about that now, watching the nation now trying to talk again about race, when maybe 10 years ago, many would have said, we are so far in advance around race, we need to stop really talking about it because we have
about it. Yes.
Under the Obama administration.
We've talked enough about it. We've talked enough about it now. Let's move on.
Yeah.
Excuse me. I'm sorry. But what we can't deal with is, I think there are several reasons why we get into that dilemma. Mm-hmm. In the United States, we have very poor historical memory.
Mm.
And I had one professor of mine that I remember is helping us to understand is about America is that this country was founded on the principle of new frontiers. The Europeans left Europe, many rejected, many looking for a new frontier, a frontier of freedom and opportunity.
Mm.
And of course, they brought Blacks here to help enhance their movement and development of that myth. But when it was, you start with the Puritan tradition in New England. Perry Miller called it an errand in the wilderness, and that and in the South, the Puritans moved. As they moved against the Indians, they kept moving, and the movement was westward. There were those who broke away from them and kept moving westward. They had the guns and the power to kill off the Indians. And eventually they moved all the way, Lewis and Clark expedition, they moved all the way to the other ocean, which is the Pacific Ocean, right? So they have crossed this continent, the North American continent, on going from frontier to frontier. Now in the South, that was not a frontier movement, many scholars point out. It was less frontier. There was more settlers. They were settled. They built, and there are scholars who point out that, well, you can look at the size of the plantation that the enslaver built and tell that he didn't build that to pick up in 5 years or 10 years from now and move on westward. He built that mansion to stay there, and he brought in slaves to push back the wilderness and to make it more comfortable and less hazardous in terms of confronting what they called the people in the wilderness. Some scholars have pointed out that Europeans saw those Indians as demons and predators who really were wild and savage. So that's a part of American history that we have done very little to study, because we have not, as scholars point out, we have not been interested in staying put. We have been interested in new frontiers. And once we, as this professor pointed out, once we conquered the frontiers of the land, we sought to conquer the frontiers of outer space. So we said, let's go to the moon. And younger generations have come along who were born to parents who said, okay, we landed a man on the moon, and now we're planning to land. Of course, that was a white man. Now we are planning to land on the moon. Other ethnic groups and other genders, not just male. So because we have been so frontier oriented, unlike people in other parts of the world, when you go to the Middle East and even to Europe and some nations in Europe, but especially in the Mediterranean world, people, we talk about America as being 200 years old or whatever. It's more than that, I think, now. But you go to Egypt and places like that, they're talking about and show you buildings that are over 1,000 years old and in certain parts of Egypt. And you say, my God, or 2,000. And you say, oh, my Lord, what are they? But they have a sense of a collective memory that is anchored in the narrative of history. And and they will, unlike American students, and I don't want to overgeneralize, but they have more of a sense of a need in school. You can go into what they call the bars, the bars is okay. That's what we would say in America. I'm trying to remember the name that they use for some of those places. But as scholars like Jean-Paul Sartre of France and others showed us how they could, they go and I remember being in some of those places and they were still talking about World War II.
It wasn't saloons, was it?
Saloons, thank you.
Saloons,
thank you. There's scholars who, thank you. Yes, there's scholars who have written intellectual pieces on those saloons. But that's where they would go and sometimes professors would meet the students at the saloon and sit and have long conversations and, drink beer or wine or whatever and eat and unlike the fast food mentality of Americans, everything's got to be so fast. They would sit for 3 or 4 hours and just discuss a novel or discuss an idea and discuss not just how I feel about the idea, but what did so-and-so think about it? What did they think about it in this time period or this place? So I'm ever fascinated by the fact that we don't have time for a patience for discussions and debates.
I want to chime in here because it's what you're talking about started to really pick up traction in the profession of journalism a few years ago, where we started questioning in the need to put out information fast and to accommodate our audience and to bring viewers the craft of looking for truth, the craft of discerning through sources, the craft of reading arguments and doing the kind of back and forward to find truth was minimized or underfinanced. And now we find ourselves where we are struggling with a methodology to get to truth.
Yes.
Because it seems that without that historical record, without the appetite for it, what the latest thing you heard or the latest thing you found or whoever you find yourself having a strong affinity for, you will, in many ways, they become source of truth.
Right.
And so you hear the challenge of misinformation is getting at this question. The challenge of fake news, the challenges of alternative facts, where we are now starting to see nationally that we have seemingly lost or have severely compromised our ability to locate and argue or have conversations that have implications for truth.
Right.
And now, so, did January 6th happen or did it not? Was it a riot or was it a protest? Yeah. Was it a rebellion? All these kinds of questions are harassing us. And I'm wondering now, to what extent will we be able to do, in terms of you thinking this through, how can we address this? Because coming from, and again, this idea of truth in trouble, your generations that you've leaned on, we've understood that knowledge was the access, or knowledge gave us access to a more sound interrogation and participation in the nation. That you didn't just try to learn to say you knew, but you were trying to be informed so you could participate. What does that mean, the deficit we have now? the attention span problem, and all of the other challenges that other scholars have pointed out. What do you see now as the best way forward in terms of creating the capacity of leadership of organizations to, in fact, pursue truth, to, in fact, try to, in the words we said at the University, Brandeis University, find truth and search for truth, even to its innermost parts?
Yes. I wished I could wave a magic wand and give the answer, or better still, I wished I could create a capsule and market it. And really that's the problem, because what we have, the age we have come to, which is instant gratification, has led us to believe now that even the way we do education, the dumbing down of it, that you don't need to spend all that time, or that's not necessary. All I need is a fragment of truth or an insight, and I take it and run, and because I want to become the next Gates or whoever, and make all the money. Or I want to just be a great athlete and be a Patrick Mahomes, or be a LeBron James.
Yeah.
But the challenge with all of that is we are moving so fast, or we in a culture that moves us so swiftly, until we don't even raise the question now about the importance of anchoring knowledge.
Say more on that. What are you getting at?
Well, ships. You have ships. I never will forget when I was a young boy. My father used to take me down to the wharf in DC and show me the ships, and there were some that we could go on, but he also pointed out to me that the ships have anchors, and then what is the function of the anchor in the storm? The captain of the ship lets down the anchors and locks and drops the anchors and protects the ship from the violent winds and storm until the storm is passed over, and then they raise the anchors back, and you can move on with you can move the ship on. And that was very insightful for me. And there's a sense in which I don't think what I saw in the previous administration, and especially when people were, okay, oh no, it's COVID doesn't exist, and et cetera. And what occurred to me, and what are they saying, was one question that I struggled with. But the other was, let me stop a minute. And okay, are they saying that it doesn't exist for a certain group of people, et cetera? And do they have is this a statement of privilege, or is it a statement of ignorance? And so I struggled with that side of it. But I also had to deal with the fact that there is nothing, we don't have anything, we don't have anchors in our being to anchor our knowledge. And that is so it stands the test of time and the turbulent winds of history. The scientists, I don't think there's been an era that like the COVID, where scientific insights and contributions by many were devalued. And you say, wait a minute, what has happened to us that we no longer believe that the people who saved us from all of these, even when I was a kid, measles, the doctors and medical people saved my generation from measles, because that kids died like old, as an old expression I think the Scottish used to use, and they would say that they are dying like sheep with a rut. But measles were killing children, and we had to get shots in school, and no kid could come to school without having without being I think vaccinated. So that was, but we've reached a point now where some people don't believe anything. They don't believe this is true. They don't believe that's true. And you say, well, what do you believe? I believe myself. Well, what kind of fool is that? If you've made yourself the norm of human order, you're in deep trouble. Because all of us have to, because we don't come here knowing, we have to trust those whose hands we fell into. To some extent, we might not absolutely trust them, but to some extent, we have to trust not only our parents, but we have to trust some aspects of society. And I often think about that, and I'll quit.
No.
Sometimes I get paranoid when I put my money in the banks. Somebody says, why do you get paranoid? Well, I'm trusting the doggone institution. But something can happen overnight that could take all of our money.
Let me say this, and then we have a question. One of the things I want to, and it's refreshing about this concept of trust and how hard it is to build it.
Yes.
How complicated things are when it's missing or when it's lacking.
Yes.
And I think my generation is maybe a part of a conversation in America where we mistrust everything. So
yes.
you don't trust the news, you don't trust the professors, you don't trust the outlets, you don't trust your leaders. And I think there is something to be said for when you think through the lens of Black history, that there is a certain kind of healthy skepticism that is cultivated as we have thought about the experience of people who have been, if we would, on the underside of American democracy for so long.
Right.
So there are questions we've learned to ask as a consequence of our experience. But I see that as a kind of healthy skepticism. But I do now wonder if the nation is struggling with maybe a unhealthy kind of skepticism. And that if the understanding is distrust, and if and as we no longer trust any institutions, one, what kind of future is that leading us towards? And two, what kind of leadership will we fall victim to?
Yes.
Without institutional knowledge anchoring us.
That's right.
About our realities. It's a very interesting conversation that's playing out now around, who do you trust? Do you trust the election? Do you trust what scientists said? Do you trust what Congress said? And of course, I'm a part of an organization who is, I think, practicing healthy skepticism, trying to interrogate claims that sometimes are so easily kind of thrown out. But after doing some, truth testing is one of the languages that we throw around, I think, in the organization. We recognize that public trust is so easily disrespected by people who we would want to honor that sacred trust, that we're trusting you to lead and to serve. We're trusting you to evaluate arguments and to have authentic conversations about us. we're trusting you not to use private information and then go into the marketplace, and you're in a room where you're learning things, and then you take that private knowledge that we put you there to help make decisions, and you capitalize on it, right? So you buying stocks and trading stocks. And of course, that's one of the questions that our organization has been trying to help the public and trying to raise those concerns that the public trust is sacred. And I think just like that is just one example of the way public trust is violated. I think racial equity is another space in which we're really talking about people violating trust.
Violating trust. That's what we. That yes.
Yeah. And, yes. As we're working. Doing the work in Mississippi, and one of the ongoing challenges is how do you analyze trust? Where is what how can we think about trust?
Yeah. Let me say a word to that in response. And when you were talking, I thought about the voting rights struggle under Dr. King's leadership and others who led us in those battles, and how when John Lewis is one of the big names that this country can never forget, because he had a belief in American democracy that I sometimes I wonder, was he predestined to believe this? But one of the things that happened is when we would go to different places in the South as young students who were out working or who were working with some of these organizations to sign up thousands of Black people to vote. Now, the laws hadn't been passed. And what they would say to us is, I don't trust them. I'm not signing anything. And you young people, we wish you well. We know you all mean well, but you all don't know white folks. You're just getting started. This generally is some elderly person who's talking to us, sitting on a porch in some part of the South, whether it's Mississippi, Georgia, some part of Georgia, Tennessee, Alabama. They're sitting there saying to us, why should we trust them? And it didn't register to me then. I struggled with it. I thought about it, but we were so enthusiastic and believing that we got to do this, and you all got to believe we can change this. Now that's the kind of indoctrination that was driving the movement. But in another sense, and sometimes they would tell a personal story about why they didn't trust. And they would I would go to my grave, some of them would say, never trusting those people. And I don't know why we have got stuck here anyway after slavery, to stay here. But then it occurred to me as I reached this point of my journey to say, they were dealing with something that every human being on the planet has to deal with. And it's going on now in Ukraine. Is it Ukraine? Yes, that's where is it Ukraine? That that it'll take generations of people. I mean, probably we can't even fathom the number of generations it's going to take for them, their children or their children's children, to ever reach a level of trust again, given what has happened to them with Russia, with the Soviet Union. No, Russia, I'm sorry, not the Soviet Union, Russia. But what I have come to see now is that there can be no racial, as you said it earlier, racial equity depends on trust. And what whites can't deal with is, it seems to me, that they're challenged to deal with is you and the people that you resent or hate, and most of us are victims of personal prejudice. We don't know the difference between personal prejudice and racism. But the people that you have come and don't want to have an opportunity, what you have not dealing with is the miracle is that some of them trust you.
Mm. Mm.
And they really don't have a reason other than they trust God.
Mm. Mm.
And what do you do? How do you govern a nation where a people have been so brutalized that they don't trust the nation?
Mm.
And I think and maybe Mr. Obama did understand it, but I think he probably didn't have an idea of it the way so many of the people that he worked with, even on the south side of Chicago before becoming president, have understood it. That this is a narrative. America is a story that has been told and has happened for decades and centuries, several centuries or more, of why it has left the African Americans and the Native Americans, the American Indians, have all had reasons to not trust the government. And yet they have proven to be some of the most trusting people. It's a paradox. It is a paradox that I wonder, and I look at it sometimes, and I wonder, are Black people, how in the world can Black people be normal if you don't trust the people that you have a right to distrust?
Mm.
Because the nation has given these people, our people, a reason not to trust them. Every candidate who runs for president, we're going to do this for you and this for you. And here we are 160 or 60 something years near about out of slavery, and justice and fairness has not been done.
You know, it's, and I know we're getting close to time. Thinking about this challenge of trust, it makes me think about this conversation and the way that it was introduced to me, and I'm sure it was introduced to you through the paradigm of the talk.
What?
And in the talk, when that Black male has to tell that young Black male the talk, and this conversation, and for me here is where the trust factor gets very complicated, because in one sense you're telling me that you want me to flourish, to grow. I'm a citizen. I am. I can go as far as my effort and skills can take me. I can. The institutions of America are designed to serve me and protect me. And then the police car is behind me. And then it's so challenging because I was told that I had rights.
Right.
And the people who told me that said, you can trust that the government, you have rights that cannot be infringed upon.
Right.
And yet in that encounter, in that moment, I learned that if I trust that this institution of public safety is going to treat me fairly,
Mm-hmm.
my response to it will be in line with what I think my rights are,
Right.
because I'm trusting it to be fair.
Mm-hmm.
And yet the talk reminds us, when you find yourself in that moment, you
Mm-hmm.
don't have rights.
You have no rights.
You
That's
don't
right.
have a voice.
That's right.
You don't have defense.
No, you don't.
You don't have, in many cases, it's almost as if they ask you, and to leave your dignity at the door,
At the door.
because whatever is asked of you then is takes precedent over whatever you think you've learned and whoever you think you are.
That's right.
And I have listened to people struggle with that, because how do you trust when your survival depends on you knowing, in some cases, you knowing the story of your people who have told you, give up the idea that you are a citizen when you get stopped.
When you get stopped.
Give up the idea that you are an American when you get
Yes.
stopped. Give up the idea that you have integrity and rights when you get stopped. And it's so often, and I'll struggle with this one with you. How do we move past as a nation if we allow everybody to start distrusting their institutions the same way we've licensed us to distrust policing institutions?
Oh, you're on the money. That's the question you raised is the litmus test, is the question that really gets at the soul of America at this stage in the journey. Because if and it might be that whites have a lot to learn, even those who distrust the country now, that they have much to learn from the people of blacks who have had to learn that lesson in the marrow of their bones. Because if you know what your people told you, and especially the black men in the family, mothers too, but that black men sort of reinforce it in a way that you didn't, as coming up as a black male, I didn't hear it with the strength from the females that I heard it from the males, daddy and the rest of them, that boy, you can be killed in the bat of an eye, and no, you don't have rights. You just shut up and do what they say. And the thing that was problematic for my generation, you'd shut up and do what they say, and you knew what happened to Emmett Till. And you said, my God, this is a nightmare. So every white policeman, the sight of them struck fear in you, that they had the power or the wherewithal to kill you. You didn't have to go to Mississippi to follow Emmett Till.
Yeah.
You could go to New York and see what happened to those young men in what was it, the
Park.
The park, the city park there.
Yeah.
And how that they were beaten into submission and misled by the system.
Yeah.
And of course, those men, some of those men live today, and some of them are living in other cities, Atlanta and other places. But boy, that's a nightmare.
Yeah, it is, and I know I wanted to. We've reached time. I want to thank you, thank the Ridenhour Prizes for letting us have this conversation. But thank you for taking time to think out loud with us.
Thank you.
You are a part of the Mississippi Project, so I get a chance to benefit from these conversations. But what I'm hoping is that we can continue to think out loud about how to get us toward a better tomorrow by not ignoring what we have learned, but just benefiting from the stories and the pain of people who have tried to teach us how to get into good trouble, because it seems
Good
as
trouble. Yeah,
listen,
John Lewis.
we,
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
getting in good trouble is trying to get truth out of trouble.
Out of trouble. Out of
And
trouble.
trying to
Yes.
reach racial equity. But
Out of the wrong hands.
yeah. But thank you so much for taking the time, and I hope and that people getting a chance to hear from you was beneficial, as it has been for generations of people who have reached for a better tomorrow. So to you,
Mr.
thank you.
Williams, and bless your bones.